The lobby smelled like magnolias and candle wax, and my hands were still cold from the cab. A woman in ivory silk grabbed my wrist before I'd even set down my bag. "Thank God, you made it," she breathed, eyes wet with relief, like I was the only person standing between her and disaster. I froze. I had never seen this woman before in my life. She didn't wait for me to say so. She looped her arm through mine, steering me toward a ballroom glowing gold with string lights, whispering that she needed me to just play along for a few hours, be her fiancé, smile, hold her hand, don't overthink it. I told myself it was Margaret. It had to be Margaret. 3 years since I'd seen Caleb's sister, people change, memory fades at the edges. So I laughed it off, said, of course, and let a stranger walk me into a party like I belonged there. It wasn't until we were near the gift table that the truth cracked open a little. She squeezed my hand and murmured that her mother had spent 6 months trying to set her up with the groom's cousin, and if she showed up alone one more time, she'd never hear the end of it. That wasn't a family emergency. That wasn't anything Margaret Whitfield would ever say. Margaret hated her mother's meddling the way most people hate small talk, but she'd never called it a disaster, never sounded this specific, this rehearsed. A small, cold seed of doubt planted itself in my chest, but the champagne was already in my hand, and the string quartet was already playing, and it felt easier to keep smiling than to ask the question forming behind my teeth. If you've ever said yes to something before you understood what you were saying yes to, tell me in the comments, because I think trusting strangers is one of the strangest, bravest things we do without even noticing. And if this happened to you, if you found yourself in a beautiful room full of people who weren't your people, holding hands with someone who wasn't yours to hold, I want to know what you would have done in my shoes. I thought back to the text that started all of this. Please come, I need you there, it means everything. No wedding named. No last name attached. I had assumed Margaret, assumed her wedding weekend, assumed my invitation to re-enter a life I'd left behind 3 years ago wrapped in nostalgia and unfinished feelings. I built an entire evening out of one blank space I filled in myself. Then I saw him. Caleb crossed the room in a charcoal suit that still fit him exactly the way I remembered, and my stomach dropped somewhere near my shoes. He wasn't supposed to be here. Except he clearly was. He walked straight up to the stranger beside me, kissed her cheek like an old friend, and said, "Margaret, you clean up nice," in a voice so familiar it hurt. Margaret. Of course. Of course there were 2 of them. I found the place cards a few minutes later, gold script curling under warm light, Margaret Ellis and Thomas Whitcomb. Not Whitfield. Not the wedding I thought I'd walked into, not the sister I used to borrow sweaters from, not any version of the night I had pictured on the drive over. I was standing in a stranger's love story, holding a stranger's hand, wearing a smile that belonged to someone else's memory of me. Caleb must have read it on my face, because he didn't look surprised. He looked like he'd been waiting. He told me he'd seen me the second I walked through the lobby doors, recognized the coat, the way I still twist my ring finger when I'm nervous even though there's no ring there anymore. He said he could have stopped it right then, could have told me I had the wrong wedding, the wrong Margaret, the wrong entire night. Instead, he stood by the bar and watched me pretend to be in love with a woman I'd met 5 minutes earlier, because some small, aching part of him wanted to see if I still looked at people the way I used to look at him. He called it curiosity. It felt, for one sharp second, like betrayal, like being watched without being seen, like my whole embarrassing, tender mistake had been someone else's quiet entertainment. I told him that wasn't fair. I told him I needed air, and I turned toward the door, humiliation rising hot in my throat, already rehearsing the version of tonight I'd tell no one. "Wait," he said, and something in his voice made my feet stop before my mind agreed to it. "You showed up for a wedding you weren't even invited to, for a sister who didn't ask you to come, for a version of us you didn't know still existed anywhere." He stepped closer, close enough that I could see 3 years of missing me sitting plainly on his face. "I don't think you got the wrong wedding, Nora. I think some part of you just wanted a reason to find me again." I didn't answer him right away. I didn't need to. Some truths don't require confirmation, they just require you to stay in the room a little longer than you planned to. If you believe some people are worth trusting even when the story doesn't make sense yet, say so below, I want to hear it. And if you've ever taken a leap towards someone without knowing exactly why, tell me the one word that describes what made you stay. Mine, that night, was simply, fate.